Let's talk more about this, and I'm joined by legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala. I think it's been 3 long days in Mpumelelo. That's what's happening. So no scrapping of the rule. It means that those who are in the cold are going to stay there a little bit longer, doesn't it?
Definitely. Maybe up until their cases have been resolved, but let's look at the downside of it. There are some that have not seen the inside of the court, meaning that there's not even a single witness that has been called into the witness box. The most important question, how long are they going to sit out in the cold, not being able to participate in the party issues? And yet there are members in which, according to Rule 5 of the ANC Constitution, they should be participating in the ins and outs of the political party.
So, in your sense, because these matters, especially when it comes to the criminal court, can drag on for a long time, it doesn't give you the sense that those who've been tainted by the spectre of accusation, indeed, you know, having charges issued against them, are going to remain quiet?
No, they won't at all. But there are a few ways in which they can do all these things. First one is to look at the criminal matters that they are faced with and try and fast-track all those criminal matters up until the end. Maybe allege that there's been non-compliance with the Criminal Procedure Act, their rights are being infringed, and everything must be fast-tracked. At the end of the day, the courts will be sympathetic to them and say you want to protect your rights at all cost, but not at the cost of not knowing the truth. The second part of it is attacking the constitution of the ANC itself in terms of saying, let's look at the element of biasness when it comes to the Integrity Commission's members, for example. Let's look at the right to reply or to be given a chance to respond in terms of all these processes when you are called to attend. And let's actually look at the process when this particular matters goes to the NEC. What type of sort of preps do they get? Are they well aware of the type of negotiations or the interactions that took place within the commissions, or are they simply asked to vote on a yes to no answer whether that particular individual should stay in? And then lastly would be let's call it the transparency and the constant application of this particular rule to all members that are there. So they may seem as if there are some members in which the commission is a bit lenient to them and to others it's a bit harsh. So it is up to those ANC members to then come back and say, especially the NEC, to come back and say, you want to protect the rights of all our members, make sure that you are consistent in running all these particular issues. But firstly, we can't do that without looking at the integrity, ironically enough, of the Integrity Commission.
Which requires some SOPs, I suppose, you know, to be put into place. Let's talk then about the possibility of a real legal challenge. We saw that this was taken up not so long ago when Ace Magashule, of course, had his matter before court. Is there likely to be more of the same to kind of force the party's hand, even though it couldn't be done at this policy conference?
I think so. If they come back with a different legal argument than the one which was tabled by Mr. Ace Magashule, the one of saying, let's look at the compliance of this particular rule to the Constitution of South Africa. One may say the ANC is a voluntary party, they can do whatever that they like. However, it can't be that far off than the provisions of the Constitution, especially when you talk about the issues of the principles of natural justice. You must be given a voice to be heard. Inside of that voice to be heard is the right to be heard by a person who's going to be impartial, who's not going to be biased. If you miss those things, then it means you're not achieving anything at all. So they may go picture court on that basis. I think that if they would make sure that their legal challenge is backed up by plausible evidence, they have testers, a number of testers that are there in terms of they would say, let's look at the number of people which are suspended. Let's look at the amount of time that they've spent outside of the ANC, not being able to do their daily duties, but most importantly, when are these matters going to be done and completed? It mustn't be a method of purging individuals so that they don't participate in ANC structures.
Well, here's a question, and I'm just thinking about it right now. You know, given that it does take a while for these matters to be resolved, the ANC knows that it's losing its own talent. You know, let's just separate the spectre of criminality from the talent. And also we look at, you know, the Zondo report, or we look at various instances where ANC members have been tainted again, you know, with the brush of scandal and corruption. They stand, the possibility of losing more and more people if more and more charges are placed, you know, on their table. Would you not say in an alternative sort of universe, this is kind of a brave move on the part of the ANC, knowing that it would run the risk of further alienating people who are already alienated, deepening the factional battles and robbing it of talent?
I would say it's a huge mistake. At the end of the day, you are in power because of the voters. So if you do something which is going to change or bring down the number of people who are going to vote for you, you're going to have a problem. Let's remember, these individuals that have been on the sidelines due to the step-aside rule were democratically elected by members in a conference, in a formal structure of an ANC meeting, and it was the majority that ruled and said, we want this individual to come in. So if you deprive individuals of their leader that they think would be appropriate in leading themselves or leading the team, at the end of the day, they're not going to have confidence in you. In fact, they're going to look at you as the current leader, in this case is the president, as an impediment of saying, this is the individual that doesn't want us to prosper, let's rather remove you at the end of the day so that you can be able to get ahead. So in its internal SWOT analysis, it should have been one of the things that looked at and they've said, let's change this thing or find a way of accommodating. There are easier ways of doing it. The labor law or the employment law realm, for example, does it perfectly in terms of saying, even if you're employed, either we're going to suspend you for a number of time while you do the investigation, but it must be completed and done within the shortest amount of time. But most importantly, let's look at the impact of the suspension or whether you're going to change this particular investigation. Inversely put, what sort of harm is going to happen to the ANC if the Secretary General of the ANC still continues to be at Luthuli House while he's still conducting his criminal offences? If the adverse was that he's been found guilty, then I would agree with them completely. But at the end of the day, the day-to-day duties that he's doing as the SG of the ANC, how are they impacting on the criminal trial, or how is the criminal trial going to impact on him? Are you going to have someone who's going to say, I'm not going to vote for the ANC because the SG is going to court? If the answer to that is no, and you can't test that, then you must think of it in a way of saying, at the end of this 5 years, I'm going to go out to voters and I need people who are going to support me.
Well, here's the interesting thing. Two things you're saying. Essentially, that the ANC could have just left this to the Labour courts to handle. It would have been depoliticised, going the suspension route or following the provisions of the Labour Relations Act. So that's the one way. But the other thing is that they wanted to send this message that they were, that they were the tip of the spear and that they were going to take action on their own, and they didn't need anyone else to adjudicate their transparency and account holding mechanisms.
Let's come back to the results. Since the step-aside resolution or step-aside rule was in application, has it decreased the level of corruption which is happening in ANC-led governments and local government? The answer would be no. Has it sent a strong message to those that are involved in serious corruption? The answer is no. Has it been able to deter certain individuals from engaging in acts of corruption? The answer is no. So what they should be concentrating on, for me, is to say, let's look at the performance of our politically deployed individuals, from your ministers, deputy ministers, premiers, MECs. Make them work at the end of the day so that you can go back to the people in November and say to them, we've worked for you. Look at the number of things we've been able to achieve. If you are going to have complaints while you deal with your own internal processes and pressures, you're not going to get anywhere. Worst of all, you are attacking the backbone of any political party, which is the Secretary General's office. It's like saying to the CEO's office, we are closing you down, we are going to put an interim structure. No one is going to drive the administrative track for you. We are going to have a problem. So for me, don't try and rewrite the law as it is. Things are already there. All you have to do is to apply them to the facts and the merits that you have. In this case, the Labour regime has taken care of when you want to suspend a person or not. Right. Stick to that so that you can be okay.
Some free advice here on the way forward then, I suppose, for the party. Thanks, Mpumelelo. Appreciate your analysis this evening. Thank you so much. Legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala.